Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 5:02 a.m. Yes, 5:02 a.m. East Coast time, Wednesday, August 14th. Very excited to break down two slates. We're going to do this at once. So if you're watching this right now, listen to what I'm about to say. It is very important. I'm going to start with the 9-game afternoon slate. There's a good chance after you're watching this, you're looking for the night slate, or maybe you're tuning in for the night slate. In the description below, I'm going to put a time stamp. You click that stamp, it'll take you right to when I start talking about the 6-game night slate in this exact same video. Figured I'd do both at once instead of doing two separate videos for it. So if you're looking for the night slate, the 6-game night slate tonight, go down to the description right now, click the link, that'll take you. It'll say a time code. It'll probably say like 15 minutes or something. I don't know when I'll start talking about it, but it depends. So I'm going to start with the 9-game slate at 12:30. Again, if you're watching this later on, you can just skip right to where I start talking about the slate after that. So wanted to get that out right away. Welcome to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Sal Vetcher. I do cover daily fantasy sports in the NFL, NBA, WNBA, and NBA. I think I said that twice, and MLB, which you're looking at right now. I'm excited about this. WNBA, I'm going to see if I can get a video up. If not, the projections will continue to go up on Patreon for the WNBA. I will be traveling today for a good amount, and that's why I'm up a little bit earlier than usual, about 20-30 minutes earlier than usual today. And NFL, there will be a video out tomorrow for the 5-game slate. I already kind of put a video out on yesterday to discuss some things. You can check that out as well for the NFL. Well, let's get right into the slate. Before we do, just some housekeeping actually. Above, the NFL course is now out, continues every single day. People have joined the course, had said good things about the course. There's a link down below to the course. Everything you want to know about what could be in the course, it's for the NFL. It's everything I know. It's a beginner to advanced level. Is down below. There's a video on there that shows you what's in it. There's a description of what's in the course. Check that all out. You can also go to Patreon down below to get my article/podcast and/or podcast that comes out later in the day for the MLB slate. I'm going to be traveling today, so for the noon slate, it's going to be difficult to get out. I have a conference to go to at 10:30 a.m. and it's going to be a couple hours away. But I will try my best to get that out for the early slate, or at least some sort of interest. And then the night slate later on, I'll be at the beach, so I'm going to try my best to do that as well. That all said, yeah, there's a bunch of Patreon stuff down below. We have the course, we have free guides down below. It's free strategy guides you can download, all of that. Let's get into the slate. Subscribe if you can. If you get any value. We're about to hit 6,100 subscribers. Very excited about that. So starting with this 9-game slate, right? And then if you want the 6-game slate that's later today, it's linked in the description right down below. There's a time code. Hop you right to there. So for the 9-game slate, we're going to start it off. I have a lot of interest, and this always pops up. Worst timing. I have a good amount of interest in Steven Strasburg today, $10,600. Look, Cincinnati is implied for one of the lowest implied team run totals. It's in the mid to low threes today. Steven Strasburg, every time he's on the slate, I rave about how good he is, and I rarely get to him because there's usually better options. Now, there's maybe not better options on this slate, in my opinion, and they're in different price ranges, but he's my favorite option if you're going to go up to $10,600. He goes deep into the games, 6 1/3 innings pitched per start. He has a 3.52 SIERA, second lowest on the slate behind only Shane Bieber, only walks 6% of batters, only gives up 1.06 home runs per 9. And now you start getting into a lot of the elite stuff. 29.3 hard hit percentage, that's below 30%. I consider that elite. 49.6% ground ball rate, approaching 50 or pretty much at 50, consider that elite. 30.5% fly ball rate, anything at 30 or below, I consider elite. And the guy does strike out 29.2% of overall batters. And it's not like he has a split against either side. He's striking out guys from either side of the plate. And this Cincinnati team, since Steven Strasburg is a righty, he's going to benefit from them. They do strike out 23.5% of the time versus righties, which is good. They only strike out 20% of the time versus lefties, so you're getting a nice split there since Steven Strasburg is a righty, a strikeout dominant righty, and the team is going to have a 192 ISO, which is not anywhere that I'm really scared for Steven Strasburg, especially since he's limiting the damage so much. They do have a low implied run total. They will be playing today in a ballpark that is going to favor the hitters, if anything. But at $10,600, Strasburg is going to be one of the 5 interests, at least early on. And again, we are like 8 hours, 7.5 hours till lock. So at least early on that I have interest in. I'm going to give you 4 more as well in no ranking order. We'll go through on the podcast later today and talk through, or the article, and talk through which ones I'm going to be more in favor of in terms of pitching, the ones that I'm landing on, specifically who I'm playing at that spot, and then talk about hitting after that stacks. Second one is going to be Wade Miley, 9,400. You have to have interest in any pitcher that's going up against the White Sox. The White Sox do have the lowest implied run total on the slate. As of right now, they have a 3.9 implied run total. So I guess the Reds are 4.1. I said they were in the threes. They're 4.1 going up against Washington, but still good total. 3.9 is the lowest on the slate as of right now. We're still waiting on 2 games to drop their totals. But yeah, Wade Miley, huge favorite right now, the biggest on the slate, the biggest for either slate, whether it's the early or the night. A 290 favorite. A lot of things that Wade Miley does nice. He's a nice ground ball pitcher, second highest or third highest ground ball rate. Second highest if you take out Colby Allard in his very small sample. So second highest at 52 0.9% for a ground ball rate. A 31% fly ball rate is also good. Look, he's not a guy who strikes guys out. 20.9% strikeout rate, but you do get him facing this White Sox team that is a 122 ISO versus righties. All right, well, let's flip that around to being what do they do against lefties, since Wade Miley is a lefty? 174 ISO, not good, right? It jumps a lot, but it's still not good. It's still below average. They strike out 26.6% of the time versus righties, 24.1 against lefties. So they become much better team in terms of not swinging and missing as much, 1.5% less against lefties, and they have a lot more power, right? 0.05 ISO increase. That's huge. That's really big. So Wade Miley, the matchup against the White Sox, is a good one, right? This is a team that has a lot of strikeouts overall in the lineup. But when you turn it around and you say, okay, what does this matchup look like against the White Sox? If we just consider that Wade Miley is a lefty, how are their splits against lefties? Well, now you're looking at the Milwaukee Brewers. Their exact stats against lefties this year since the start of June is exactly to what the Milwaukee Brewers are doing. The Milwaukee Brewers strike out 24% of the time, 23.8 to be exact against lefties, and they have a 179 ISO. The White Sox have a 174 ISO, strike out 24.1% of the time. It's very similar to what they're doing there. I could probably pick out another team that's doing similar things, maybe not on this slate, but overall in the league, there's other teams that are being very similar there. You have the Cubs, who have a worse ISO against lefties than the White Sox do, actually, a 169, and they have strike out 25.2% of the time. So, I mean, what you're getting today in a matchup for Wade Miley is pretty much the Cubs and the Brewers. And I'm not saying the Cubs and the Brewers are good against lefties. I'm just saying kind of try to filter out that your expectations are it's the White Sox, they're so bad. Yeah, but they're drastically worse against righties, and Wade Miley is a lefty. And Wade Miley is not this overpowering lefty that I think can make up for it. So I do have interest in Wade Miley at 9,400. I think he's overpriced. I think if he was a righty, he might not be overpriced against the White Sox. If he had strikeout stuff, he definitely wouldn't be. But yeah, I think he's interesting today because, look, it's a 9-game slate. You're going to go through and you're about to see some really bad pitchers, especially there's a game in Coors Field where you probably don't want either pitcher. So we're going to go through the next three, and they're going to be bad pitchers or relative good to bad pitchers. So giving you the Steven Strasburg, which to me seems like the obvious play up top, giving you the Wade Miley as an option as your SP1 if you wanted to save $1,200 is what I wanted to do, because right now everybody else is just grossly overpriced in this range, in the $8,000 range, in the upper $7,000 range, in my opinion. Outside of one player, but he's pitching in Coors Field. So Wade Miley is a second interest. I'm going to highlight over Robbie Ray. He is not an interest of mine today. He's $8,100, and this is a guy that you're used to paying 5 figures for. It's because he's pitching in Coors Field today. Do I have interest in him? No, I probably do not. Now, the Rockies are much worse against lefties this year in terms of their strikeout rate. They strike out 1.5 times more, 24.5 compared to 23% against righties. But they have more power against lefties. Again, this game is in Coors Field, and Robbie Ray isn't the pitcher that I would take a risk on in Coors Field. I get it. Robbie Ray has a really nice SIERA, a 3.92 SIERA. He strikes out 31.5% of righties, 30.9% of batters overall. I understand. Those are good numbers. But the thing that I want to keep an eye on is a lot of the fly balls that Robbie Ray throws or gets hit against him, a lot of the line drives, they're going to be exploited in this ballpark. He has a 39.2% ground ball rate and a 36.8% fly ball rate. You pair that with a 42% hard hit rate, and I don't like that. I like to see usually in the mid-40s and approaching that elite 50 number for ground ball rate, keeping the ball on the ground a lot if I'm pitching a guy in Coors Field. So I get it. He's 8,100. He goes 5 2/3 inning pitch per start. He's one of the better pitchers on the slate in terms of talent, like a top 5, top 4, probably maybe even top 3. But I'm not going to get there today. I get it. He's dirt cheap. He has a lot of upside. But again, he's pitching in Coors Field as a guy who's not a ground ball pitcher. Does strike guys out, so that helps. It's not like he's not getting any strikeouts and not getting any ground balls. So the fact that he does strike a lot of batters out helps. And maybe I should reevaluate this and consider playing him, because he'll probably go lower owned than he should. So we'll come back to that one. That's something that later in the podcast or article I'll kind of decide on if Robbie Ray is going to be a secondary interest of mine or not. Because you could probably make some great lineups if you use Robbie Ray as your SP1 and you save, $2,500 off Strasburg today, which I imagine a lot of people go to Strasburg. So considering on what I see on ownership on some of the sites I look at, I'll have a decision on whether or not I think Robbie Ray is going to be an interest of mine or not. Right now, he's sort of on the fence because the price point is the only reason I have any interest in him. Everything else screams it's potentially a bad spot, outside of the fact that Colorado does strike out 24.2% of the time versus lefties. But my third interest on paper that I had before I even came into this is J.A. Happ, 7,100. Look, he's going up against Baltimore. He has the best overall strikeout matchup on the slate for his handedness. Baltimore strikes out 26.3% of the time. That's a really good matchup. They only have a 159 ISO against lefties, so they're worst in the league in terms of power, or worst on this slate in terms of power against lefties. They're the second worst on the day if you take into account the late slate. Only Detroit is worse. So second worst in the league against generating power against lefties, and they have the highest strikeout rate on this slate in terms of facing lefties. J.A. Happ's a huge favorite, 245. The Yankees get to face Dylan Bundy, a man who gives up tons of home runs. The Yankees hit a tons of home runs, so there's a good chance that if J.A. Happ can at least go 5 innings, and he's been going 5 1/3, 5 2/3 as of late, pitching a lot better, that he can get the win here. Now, he's not a guy who has strikeout stuff, but again, we talked about the matchup against Baltimore. It's going to bring out more and more strikeout stuff. His strikeout stuff is slowly trending upwards as well. I don't really ever enjoy playing J.A. Happ because he gives up so much power. 2.18 home runs per 9 is the 3rd highest on this slate. And he gives up a 248 ISO to righties, which is the 4th highest on this slate. So he gives up so much power, but again, we already talked about Baltimore not having as much power. Baltimore striking out a ton, so 7,100 kind of filters a lot of that out. I think it's a fair price point. He's going to be my 3rd interest today. He is a guy who I probably look to pair with Strasburg more often than not. $17,700 you spend, or if you want to pitch Robbie Ray, you spend $15,200, and you have a ton of money to do other things if you pair him with J.A. Happ. 4th interest is Homer Bailey. Now, I much prefer getting to J.A. Happ. The matchup is just so much better in my opinion. And the run total for Baltimore, I believe, is only 4.2. If we quickly look at Fantasy Labs, run total is 4.2 for Baltimore and 4.2 for San Francisco. So both of these teams have the same run total that Homer Bailey and J.A. Happ are facing. Homer Bailey, 6,800. Yeah, I like getting here to an extent. Like, I much prefer J.A. Happ. Homer Bailey's not a guy who has strikeout stuff either, 19.8% overall. He doesn't give up power, though, and that's what J.A. Happ does. Well, he doesn't give up as much power. 1.25 home runs per 9. Going to be pitching in San Francisco. That will naturally limit the power. San Fran, only a 176 ISO versus righty since the start of June. That 176 ISO is the 6th lowest on the slate, but they only strike out 22% of the time. So unlike Happ, who doesn't strike guys out but has the best strikeout matchup for lefties on the slate, you get Homer Bailey, who doesn't strike guys out, and the opponent he's facing doesn't strike out. 22% is one of the lower ones on the slate. If I quickly glance, 22% is actually the 5th lowest on the slate out of 18 teams. So the ballpark is nice. The fact that Homer Bailey doesn't give up as much power as a guy like a J.A. Happ or some other pitchers down in this range is also nice, and the matchup overall power not there. So I think J.A. Happ or Homer Bailey is more of your safe play. I don't think he has any strikeout upside today, really. I think 3-4 is what you're looking at. I think J.A. Happ can actually hit the 5, 6, 7 range in strikeouts, depending on how deep he goes. So I much prefer J.A. Happ. It's going to depend, again, even on ownership, I still prefer J.A. Happ at this range. There's not a lot of faith in Homer Bailey. Both of these pitchers aren't fantastic, but weighing their matchups, I prefer Happ. Homer Bailey, though, still interesting. And then my 5th and final interest right now is $5,600 Tyler Beede. Look, I looked into it a little bit this morning because I always feel like I kind of mention Tyler Beede or I get to him, and he never really produces that much. Like, you're lucky if you get 10 fantasy points from him. But I like the fact that he's a righty. Like, Oakland is really, really good against lefties. They only strike out 17.4% of the time since the start of June against lefties. They have a 214 ISO. Those would rank on the top 5 on this slate. But when you flip them around against righties, they strike out 23.6% of the time. That's a huge split. That's the biggest split out of any team on the slate. They go from 17.4 to 23.6. They have a 6% difference, a 6.2% difference in their strikeout rate when they're facing righties. That's a big benefit for Tyler Beede, a guy who does strike out 21% of batters overall. And again, when you break it down a little bit more, he strikes out 24.4% against right-handed pitching. Oakland today, I believe, only has like a 4.4 implied run total. If we quickly look at it, yeah, so they have a 4.4 implied run total, which doesn't really scare me that much, especially since the pitcher's 5,600. Beede does go about 5 innings pitched per start, so you're going to get that win upside potentially today out of him. The game is kind of a toss-up. When you factor in the Homer Bailey versus Tyler Beede today, it's sort of a toss-up on who's going to be the winner. Small favorite for Homer Bailey, but nothing that I'm saying that it can't be Tyler Beede today. So Beede, 4.92 Sierra, obviously not great, but he's 5,600, so you know it's not going to be great. The things that are scary: highest hard hit percentage on the slate, 46.5% by over 2 percentage points. That's not great. There's a lot of things that he also doesn't do well, right? He gives up a 210 ISO to both sides of the plate, a 183 home run per 9, 10% walk percentage. So there's a lot that this guy does that is damaged, right? He gives up 10% walks, is top 5 on the slate, 1.83 home runs per 9 is top 5 on the slate, highest hard hit percentage we talked about. The only bright spots for him are: 1, he's 5,600, 2, he probably goes 5 innings in this game more often than not. Strikes out 24% of righties, 24.4% of righties, going to face a good amount of righties, probably 6 in this lineup for Oakland, and they strike out 6% more against righties. So 5,600, he has to be interesting because he's allowing you to do a lot with your lineups. If you want to pair him with Strasburg, you're spending $16,200. You want to pair him with really any other SP1 that we mentioned, you're spending like $15,000 or below. So I do think he's interesting. Just to recap for the early slate: Steven Strasburg, Wade Miley, J.A. Happ, Homer Bailey, and Tyler Beede are interests of mine. Right now, I think Steven Strasburg stands out of that group. I didn't talk about Trevor Bauer. I'm probably not going to be getting to Trevor Bauer. Washington has a 5 implied run total. They're playing in an afternoon game in Washington where it's supposed to be like 90-something degrees, and Trevor Bauer Just gives up a little bit more power than I would want. A 224 ISO to lefties is the main thing that worries me. Juan Soto, I think, is in a fantastic spot. Matt Adams, I think, is in a fantastic spot. The lefties from Washington. I'd rather go to Strasburg today, who doesn't give up as much power and really no power. Only a 146 ISO to lefties, a 150 ISO to righties. I know he's pitching in the same exact ballpark as Bauer, but he doesn't give up any power, where Bauer does give up power. 1.23 home runs per 9 and 9.5 walk percentage for Bauer. Only a 6% walk percentage for Strasburg, and 1.06 home runs per 9. And I mean, we don't even have to get into it when Strasburg's a 50% ground ball pitcher and Trevor Bauer's not even a 40% ground ball pitcher. Strasburg's below 30% and hard hit percentage, and Trevor Bauer is at 40%. So yeah, no shot that I'd much prefer Strasburg over Bauer today. And then in the article or whatever I end up doing, if it's a quick analysis in an article or podcast, because I'll be driving literally during this time. But before that, Robbie Ray, I'll make a decision on. Not sure yet. So that's it for the early games. Hopefully this helps. I will talk about hitting and pitching and all that, and rank them in an article or podcast later today. But in terms of the late slate, we're going to start. And then this is so if you hit the time code, it works perfectly. We are going to start the late slate right now. There you go. Welcome if you just hit that time code. Welcome if you already saw the early game or you didn't care about the early games and now you want to see the late games. We just went over that. That's all done. Now we're going to talk about this 6-game late slate today. So hopefully this works out well for you. Hopefully you're able to find the spot in the video. So we'll talk about it right now. 6 games, 12 teams. Pitching is kind of meh. In terms of having strikeout dominant pitchers, you really don't have any on this slate. I mean, you have Aaron Nola, who strikes out guys looking all the time, has a 26.6% strikeout rate, but 26.6% to lead a slate is usually something we don't see. So let's get into it. I have 4 interests right now on this slate, and 4 interests on a 5-game or 6-game slate is usually about right. I'll probably take 3 at the end of the day. We'll talk about those, and we'll talk about all 4, and we'll talk about the 3 later on. So if you do have interest in seeing what I'm talking about in hitting, pitching later on today and where I'm finalizing myself, I'll probably be doing quicker articles just for today because I am traveling. I do have a conference and I'm going to be driving 4 hours total in the day, and I have the conference for 3. So it's really going to be hard to kind of get any detailed half-hour podcast or detailed article up, but I'll try my best. So Clayton Kershaw, $11,800. On yesterday's 15-game slate, I said he's overpriced. I get it, the matchup against Miami. On this 6-game slate, 6-game slate where you're dealing with 12 pitchers and of like 5 of whom are just absolute garbage or in tough matchups, you have to more heavily consider Clayton Kershaw. Now he's $11,800. This Miami team is not the same Miami team you're going to be targeting if indeed he was a righty, right? Miami, a 139 ISO against righties, a 163 versus lefties. Look, that's still well below average. Average right now is like a 180 ISO for the summer. But they go from being putrid, terrible, can't hit the ball at 139 ISO against righties, to serviceable, to below average, but not miles below average at 163. They strike out 25% of the time versus righties, only 24% of the time versus lefties. So they go from being a team that strikes out, and it's only a 1% difference, but in terms of how you kind of anchor it in your own head, they go from being only the 4th highest or the 5th highest strikeout team on the slate against lefties compared to being the 2nd highest strikeout rate on the team against righties. So depending on how you anchor it, this team is much better against lefties. And you have Clayton Kershaw today, who's going to give up hard hit percentage, 42.5%, going to give up ground balls, 50%. Does strike guys out 24.4% against lefties, but I don't care about that. Miami doesn't really roster any lefties. He strikes out 25.8% against righties, which is the 3rd highest on the slate against righties, which I do like to see. He strikes out more against righties than lefties because he's going to get a platoon advantage with this Miami lineup. Only walks 5% of batters, has the best Sierra on the slate at 3.83. And the main thing that I'm looking at, he goes 6.5 innings pitched per start. That is 2 outs more. Brad Keller goes 6.08, then nobody else goes 6 innings. That is 2 outs more than anybody else on the slate. He's a huge favorite. He's $11,800, and he's as close to a lock on a 6-game slate as it gets. I'm not going to say he's a lock because ownership is probably going to pile all the way onto him. So keep an eye on it. He's definitely an interest of mine. He's facing Miami. And there's ways to kind of work your way out of him on a bigger slate because of his price point. But on a slate like this, there's not many options, and you're about to see like 3 to 4 pitchers that are just grossly overpriced, 2 to 3 pitchers that are just gross in general, and then you're left with like 6 pitchers to choose from, and I picked 4 of them. So Clayton Kershaw is definitely one interest. Number 2 is Cole Hamels going back to face Philadelphia. Philly, if anything, struggles a little bit more against lefties. They strike out 23.2% of the time versus lefties compared to 22% of the time versus righties. A 175 ISO versus lefties is not scaring me. The things I do like about Cole Hamels, look, he'll be pitching in Philly today, which is going to be very hitter-friendly. more so than pitcher friendly. He has the third best SIERA on the slate, 4.35. He only gives up 0.84 home runs per nine. That's good. Now he has the elite numbers that I look for. 50.3% ground ball rate. That's top 4 on the slate. 30.7% fly ball rate. That's also top 4 in the slate. So he's elite in terms of his fly ball rate at 30% or below. He's elite in terms of his ground ball rate at 50% or higher. And he gives up no power. Those are things that I like to see. Now, the weak spots are that he only strikes out 21.9% of batters overall, but he at least does strike out 24.3, which is around average or slightly above average against righties. Be getting a decent amount of righties in this lineup, most likely 6 righties in the lineup. Gives up absolutely no power to lefties. So he strikes out righties, gives up no power to lefties. So your Bryce Harper's today, not in the greatest shots to hit anything out of the ballpark at an 0.49 ISO. Only gives up a 148 ISO to righties. 0.49 ISO to lefties, 148 to righties. So not a guy who has a lot of strikeout upside. At 9,300, I don't like paying for guys who don't have strikeout upside at that price point, especially since they're in matchups against a team that is as good, right? But since the start of June, Philadelphia has been exactly average. 175 ISO versus lefties, 172 versus righties. And they strike out 23.2% of the time. That's as average as it gets as a team since the start of June. So Cole Hamels is going to be my second interest. There's nothing that I deeply enjoy about Cole Hamels, but if Clayton Kershaw does have a ton of ownership on him, and I'm talking about, 45 to 55% ownership on him, then Cole Hamels, pivoting to him as your SP1 makes some sense to me. Not going to get to Aaron Nola. If Aaron Nola was a lefty, I would get there because the Cubs are actually terrible. 169 ISO and 25.2%. Strikeout rate against lefties, but Aaron Nola, a guy who does have strikeout stuff himself, but the Cubs only strike out 23% of the time versus righties, and they have a 200 ISO, so they go from being a very weak team against lefties to a powerful team, a top 3 team on the slate in terms of power against righties. So my third interest is going to be Dallas Keuchel. So I skip over Marco Gonzalez. He's just overpriced. I don't care that he's facing Detroit. He has absolutely no strikeout stuff at 15.8%. He has the second lowest strikeout stuff on the slate. He doesn't give up power, 0.92 home runs per 9, only a 5.9% walk percentage. But he's facing Detroit, which is why this is happening, right? They stink. Against lefties, they have a 140 ISO, lowest in the league. They strike out 24.7% of the time, 4th highest on the slate against lefties. But Marco Gonzalez also stinks. One of the top SIERAs on the slate, 4.93. Gives up a 40% ground ball rate, doesn't strike anybody out like we said. So I don't know where you're getting your upside. You're getting your upside if this guy goes 7 innings or more. Now he does go 5.84 innings pitched per start, but I think way too many people are going to hop on Marco Gonzalez solely for the fact that he's facing Detroit today. Again, it's a good spot. He gives up no power. He's going to be pitching in Detroit, which is going to play probably neutral to hitting and pitching. Detroit has no power, but I don't like that he pitches to a lot of contact, and he does give up a lot more fly balls than ground balls. Or gives up more fly balls to ground balls on average. So, yeah, Marco Gonzalez, just looking at him, he seems like he's similar to a Cole Hamels type play. The more I think about it, Cole Hamels, I think, has a little bit, definitely more strikeout stuff. I mean, against righties, 5% more. But the more I talk about it, the more I'm starting to enjoy thinking about playing Marco Gonzalez. I mean, maybe not enjoy is the right word, but opening up to it. It's just a price point at 8,700. Do I really want to pay that, even if he is facing Detroit, for a guy who, on average, goes out there and scores, I don't know, like in 9 points per game. So yeah, I'm gonna have to come back to that in maybe an article or podcast later. It's interesting because of the matchup, but there's really nothing else that I do like, because it's the matchup and the fact that he doesn't give up power. But I hate the price. I hate a lot of the other things like his strikeout upside at this price. At least Cole Hamels has somewhat of a strikeout upside at this price point. So we'll come back to that. Not an interest yet for me of Marco Gonzalez. Third interest is going to be Dallas Keuchel. Look, his price point finally dropped. He's 6,800. He's facing the Mets. He has the most elite ground ball stuff in the entire league at 58.2%. Only gives up 19.6. These are like the number ones in the league. 19.6 fly ball rate. So he's giving up absolutely no fly balls, getting a ton of ground balls. Going to be pitching in Atlanta today, which is the worrisome part, right? Atlanta is going to be very home run friendly, very hitter friendly. So that is worrisome. He's a lefty. The Mets on this season have actually hit lefties better than righties, which is concerning. 21.5% strikeout rate against lefties, and a 205 ISO is the second highest on the slate against lefties. So, look, Dallas Keuchel is a guy who is going to limit damage in terms of allowing you to put the ball in the air. But this is going to be a ballpark where it's going to get really worrisome because it just flies out of there in Atlanta. I'm really relying on the price point of 6,800. I'm really relying on him being the pitcher that goes the third deepest into the games, but he's priced as the 8th most expensive pitcher. So he goes 5.92 innings pitched per start. He's not a guy, once again, who's going to have a ton of strikeout stuff. He has elite strikeout stuff, the highest on the slate, maybe not elite, but the highest on the slate, 28.9 against lefties. You'll get your 3 lefties in this lineup, so that's good, but he only strikes out 15.6% of righties, and that's definitely not good with Jeff McNeil and Pete Alonso being able to hit anything out of the ballpark. Doesn't give up that much hard hit percentage. He's a guy at 6,800 that I feel comfortable paying that price point. He's not $8,000 like he has been in the past. So yeah, I do like Dallas Keuchel today at $6,800. He's my third interest. My fourth interest, and honestly, I should probably just stop it at Dallas Keuchel. But my fourth interest is going to be Dakota Hudson, who's very similar to Dallas Keuchel in that they're both fantastic at getting ground balls and limiting fly balls. I think they're 1-2 in the league right now in terms of their ground ball and fly ball rates. Dakota Hudson, a 57.1% ground ball rate and a 20.8% fly ball rate. That would be number one on any other slate if he wasn't on the same slate as Dallas Keuchel. Now, similar to Keuchel, he's not the greatest with strikeout pitchers, and he's probably much worse. 17% overall strikeout rate. Gives up a 224 ISO to lefties, but only a 129 ISO to righties. So that's the key number that I want to point out. A 129 ISO to righties. He'll probably face 7 righties in this Kansas City lineup. We know Kansas City is not good. Against righties, they have a 141 ISO, third worst in the entire league. They don't strike out that often, though. That's something that's worrisome. But this Kansas City team, you get Dakota Hudson, who doesn't give up as much power as the other guys around him. I mean, he's $6,000 and gives up a 1.41 home runs per 9. That 1.41 home run per 9 on this slate is the 6th best out of 12 teams. So there's 6 other pitchers that are much worse than him, and all those guys are below $7,000, so or $7,100 with Mats or below. So Dakota Hudson, he does go 5 innings pitched per start. I do like that. And when I look at it, just the fact that he can keep the ball on the ground, he faces Kansas City. A big piece of this is becoming because he does face Kansas City. And Kansas City is terrible, and he gives up the least power to righties on the entire slate. The least. Less than Aaron Nola, less than Kershaw, less than Cole Hamels. A 129 ISO is the least power he gives up to righties, and he'll probably face at least 6, maybe 7 righties in the lineup today. So Hudson at $6,000 is also interesting to me. I'm not going out there pitching him and hoping that he gets me 20 fantasy points. At $6,000 flat, I'm happy, and I'm very happy if he gets me 15 with the win. 12 I'll take, honestly, on a slate like this. So my interest right now, Clayton Kershaw, Cole Hamels, Dallas Keuchel, and Dakota Hudson. Right now, I'm most convicted around Clayton Kershaw, but I imagine everybody will be. So depending on ownership, I'll see if I pivot to a Cole Hamels or a Marco Gonzalez, as gross as that sounds. Detroit is just so bad. This Detroit team is terrible. There's nobody in that lineup outside of Jacoby Jones that even begin. He doesn't scare you. Like, he doesn't. Jacoby Jones would be like a bench player on a lot of teams in the league. But he doesn't scare you. But there's nobody in that lineup that, outside of him, that I even think is going to get a base hit off of me. Their lineup these past couple of days has just been terrible. Nick Castellanos hit another home run yesterday for the Cubs. I mean, he's just been fantastic since leaving there. Maybe the other players need to leave there. This team is dead last against lefties in ISO. They're 25% strikeout rate against lefties as well, which is one of the higher ones in the league, one of the higher ones on this slate. Gonzalez does go deep into the games and limits home run power. So, I mean, the way that Gonzalez gets smacked around today is because, okay, he has a 4.93 SIERA. He gives up a ton of singles to this team. That's really bad. And from there on out, he can't strike out anybody else. And you're looking at $8,700 Marco Gonzalez sitting there with 12 to 15 fantasy points. And I think that's a realistic outcome. But I think he could also get to 20. So right now it's Kershaw, Cole Hamels, Dallas Keuchel, and Dakota Hudson. I have a lot of interest in Clayton Kershaw. And then I have similar interest in Keuchel and Hudson. I don't know which one I like more. They're very similar pitchers to me. Hudson by far is the better matchup. And he's cheaper, so I might lean there. But Dallas Keuchel goes almost an inning more per start. And then Marco Gonzalez, we're just going to say no. We're going to say we're going to fade him. We're not doing it. At least I'm not doing it. $8,700. I get it. Detroit stinks. They stink even more against lefties. But I don't want to pay $8,700 for Marco Gonzalez, who most likely is going to become chalky on this slate. So that's a 6-game slate. If you watch both videos, thank you. That's both games. I'm going to get this video up as soon as I can. And I will remember to put the time code down below. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetchaDFS. Follow me or go down below for the NFL DFS course. You can check it out. You can scroll. It has all the information you need to know about the course before you go ahead and do decide if you want to purchase it or not. And then you could also hit down below to Patreon if you're interested in some of the articles and podcasts that I do specifically for whether it's the MLB, projections for the WNBA, and all the stuff I have coming for the NFL. Lots of exciting things to announce, a couple of deals in the works. I think that you guys are going to be excited about it. I definitely am. Not going to announce it yet, but once it's official, we will. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button before you go. My name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang.